Hello, everyone. Welcome to the financial management section of Business Essentials. I'm Mr. Zimmer, and I've got my assistant Austin here today. He may chime in when he feels like it. Right now, he's bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. We have a list of things that we're going to talk about with financial management. If you haven't already, you need this document, and you need to make a copy for yourself. You can use other people to help you complete this document. But other than that, we're going to just build through this document and make some notes for ourselves. And I hope you can enjoy yours as well. I also have my assistant Mackenzie, it looks like, who will be going to bed before too long. Mackenzie, would you like to say hi? And there she is. All right, I'm going to go tuck her in real quick, and then I'll continue with the notes. All right, we're back. We need to find some assets. One of the fun things to do in finding these six things is to use Monopoly as our perspective. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to use a Monopoly exercise, and then we'll build to building a Monopoly, and we'll build to playing Monopoly. So that's kind of what this week's going to entail, but we got to work through some things before you can actually get to the game play. The quicker you pick this up, the quicker you get to the game play. So we'll keep that in mind as well. But the first thing we're going to do, as I preluded, is the assets here. We want to talk about those first, and these are things that you use to run your company. They aren't things that you typically sell off, and it usually takes a long time. So these are the things that you utilize within your company to make it run and make it work. Some of those assets include things like the almighty, and I'm going to tab in here, cash. And so right now, with cash, to identify what would happen in Monopoly with the cash amount that you would have, everybody starts out with a certain amount of cash. So we're going to go find a picture of cash, and you need to know that cash is, you're going to get $2,000 to start each game. Technically, in the real game, you only get $1,500, the original version, but I'm going to give you $2,000 because I'm a nice guy. So I'm going to pause for a second. I'm going to go get my picture, and then I'll be back. I'd like you to do the same. Okay, so I'm back now. I found some assets here. I wanted to go ahead and put the rest on there that I think you need as well, and you can use some variations of images here. But the first one I wanted to identify is cash, and I put some example of Monopoly money right here. And then again, to remind you, you always start with $2,000. I'm going to put this as your startup cash. And it's going to show up in capital as well when we get down to there, but we'll save that for a moment. The other couple assets that you will have, things you will need to run your company as a Monopoly entrepreneur, is property right here. And these are in the form of deeds. And these cards give you a bunch of information. I'll explain that here later. But this represents an asset that you have. Another asset that goes along with this is houses and hotels. Houses and hotels can be built on each property once you have all of one color group. That's not necessarily the way it happens in real life, but in the game, it's essential for you to show that you have a monopoly of something. When you have a whole color group, you have a monopoly of something, and then that gives you advantages when you control all of one resource. So houses and hotels, also an asset because they help you make money, but you don't necessarily get rid of them frequently. The last thing on here that we're going to recognize as an asset for the game of Monopoly is a get out of jail free card. This is an ideal scenario when you are stuck. Honestly, I don't really like the card because I'd rather be in jail sometimes. The only time I don't want to be there is when I'm trying to buy property. So a get out of jail free card is considered an asset because it's something tangible that you can have and use within the game. Okay, and it's kind of a benefit to the business, and it's not something you buy and sell. It's something you get, and it just kind of improves the value of your business, if you will, or increases the capital of your business. So to describe the next thing, that was assets. The next thing we have is capital. And capital is the amount of money a business needs to start and operate. They call this startup capital. It also represents the dollar amount of money you have invested into your company. Now, when I say dollar amount, don't get confused with only cash, okay? It can mean more than cash. It can mean, for instance, I bought Boardwalk, and Boardwalk costs $400. So I spend the $400, so I no longer have that $400 in cash, but I have $400 worth of property or $400 of capital built up in the property that I own. Yeah, that's right, Austin. Austin's agreeing with me. Okay, so those are assets, and that is capital. And then we're going to go into a couple things that are intertwined in capital and in asset, dealing with assets. They are called expenses, and I'm going to add revenue in here as well. I believe I already added it for you. I believe I put revenue as number 3. So let me add that real quick. And we're going to just add it here on the fly. I'm going to pause for a second and grab a couple things for revenue, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back, and so is Austin. He's here to help us. He's found some ways to earn revenue in Monopoly. And over here in this little number 3 section, the first way you really make money in Monopoly is rent. And in this case, it's a perfect example of having to buy something, or it takes money to make money. So right here is the first initial amount of rent that you would charge if you had this orange card and you were playing the Here and Now edition, because this is $140,000 in rent. If you were playing the regular edition, it would be a different property and it would be $14. So basically they just added 4 zeros to everything for the Here and Now edition. But anyway, your first initial way to make money would be to charge rent, and this would be if you own the initial space, this $140,000. If you owned all 3 color properties of orange, then you could start putting houses, and then they tell you what the rent would be that you could charge with those houses, and eventually a hotel on there. They also tell you how much each one would cost, so you could identify your costs for those different things as well. Another way you can make money along with charging rent is free parking. You can just land there and you gain money. Sometimes, if the game's right, you gain property too. But that's one way to gain some revenue. Another way is through some chance cards that can give you money. Same way with Community Chest. And then finally, every time you pass go, which most of you are probably familiar with, you get $200. Or in the Here Now edition, you get $2 million. It's all relative. It's just inflation. And the one thing you need to know about revenue, it's directly related to capital, in that this is the only way capital increases is through revenue. All right, so anything that's considered revenue increases capital. The other account, the opposite, hiding underneath capital, is the expenses. And expenses are different than like these costs up here to build assets, like houses and hotels. Expenses are things that cost you money to do business, and they don't have an opportunity to earn you more money. Does that make sense? And it can get kind of tricky when you talk about some advertising and marketing aspects. And if you take marketing class, we'll get more in depth with that. But for basic Monopoly purposes, the major expenses that you're going to have, some of those chance cards have some bad things that happen, so you'll have some expenses there. Likewise, rent, you could be charged rent playing Monopoly, and the Community Chest. And there's also another way in which you can be charged expenses. One item I didn't put on here, but is also on the board, are taxes. There's an income tax and there's a luxury tax on the basic version. Those are also considered expenses. They are tax expenses. Those are generally something that happens in business all the time, so it's kind of convenient that they put them on there. Normally, we would also call the utilities, like your electric company and your water company, those would be expenses to a business. But in this case, you can own those. They're not public entities, so they're actually treated like any other property. So we don't really write those, and we won't calculate those as expenses in this game. So expenses, opposite of revenue, they take away from your capital. So while this one increases, this one can decrease it. All right, so as we move on down and we've established what those items are, our next job is to describe how the business will document and report financial records. And to do that, they will make things like worksheets, income statements, statement of changes in owner's equity, and balance sheets. Now, these all probably sound really foreign to you, and that's okay. We will look at these later after you play your game to determine who won. Just because you have the most cash doesn't necessarily mean you won in our game. So we'll use these items when I return to try and define and identify who did or did not win. And it's a great way to teach that lesson as well. So don't be alarmed about these. You just want to have these listed. So if you'll add these to your notes, and if you want to find some images to go along with them, that would be great. No, it's not an option. You have to find images that go along with these and plug those underneath. You need to find a worksheet. An accounting worksheet is what I would type into your Google image search. An income statement, statement of changes in owner's equity, and a balance sheet. Okay? And we'll talk more about those at length when we get to that part. But just have them here for now so they're in the list of 7 things. Number 6, we want to forecast finances to project future profitability. What I want you to do here is I want you to predict, or I want you to forecast, based on your ability to play Monopoly, how much money you think you can make versus how much you think you're going to spend to make that money. And how much you make versus how much you spend is ultimately going to determine your profitability. So I just want you to guess here. I want you to guess and kind of forecast what you think your expenses are going to be when you play the game. And then I want you to also guess how much you're going to make and find the difference and put the difference right here. So you're going to predict a little bit. And going along those same lines, the last thing is explain how your business will acquire money to grow and expand. Right here, I want you to tell me your plan. All right, this was just pure numbers when you're forecasting finances. Now tell me your plan. What properties are you going to buy? Who are you going to trade with? How are you going to make your company grow? All right, that's what I want you to tell me here. So I'm going to give you some time. I would pause the video before you keep going and answer these questions. Find images for these things. I want you to get the images for your revenue and your expenses. Put some things down there. We really did not need to do much more than say that this is money that represents how much you have invested in your company. There's not much more that you need to say about capital. And I also have it defined below in a group of terms. So right now, find your images for revenue, for expenses. Put these items in here and find images for them. And then forecast what you think is going to be your money situation throughout the game. And then explain to me how you're going to do that, how you're going to grow your company. When you get done, you can resume the video. I'll actually post another video. Actually, no, I'll pause, and then I'll finish these last couple things, and then that will be your video for today. All right, so I'm going to pause. I'll give you some time. You pause too, and we'll come back in a minute. Okay, I have something defined for you here. It says, what is a budget and how do you use it? I gave that to you. What I want to show you is where to find a budget. So that's a pretty easy scenario here. We're first going to go to add-ons, and then if you don't have the template gallery, you're going to have to go to get add-ons, and you're going to have to find this template gallery right here. So if you need to pause the video and go find it, go do that now. I'm going to keep going. I already have this gallery, so I'm going to go back to add-ons, template gallery, browse templates. And look here, we have right underneath business, we have finance and accounting. That's what we want to click on. In there, look, we have balance sheet and income statement, a couple things I already talked about. There's also a profitability thing we can project. But what I want you to get is the 12-month business budget. I want you to copy it to your drive. And then I want you to open file. And when that file gets done opening, I want you to go to share, get shareable link, and copy the link into your notes here. So I'm going to close now. And I want you to paste that link in here so you have a copy, just like that, of a business budget. I'm going to pause for a second. I'll be right back. Okay, as you look at those budgets, or the budget that you copied over, mine's over here. There's some different categories. There's operating income, non-operating income, and then there's some expenses. Well, those are relative to some of the things I showed you in your notes. We've got 3 types of budgets here: startup budget, cash budget, and operating budget. Startup budget is the money you need to start your business and make it run initially. Then you build a cash budget. What cash are you going to have on hand? And then finally, you're going to have an operating budget. And this is all the things you need for day-to-day expenses. That concludes your notes for today. I'll look forward to talking to you about how to record transactions tomorrow.